It's March 8th, 2009. I'm feeling a little bit better. I've really been feeling bad the last 3 or 4 days. Not had much energy. This is my friend Nick's pinball playfield. This is SpaceMission. I've gone through a whole bunch of different iterations of masking off these, I call these zones, these paint zones. I started out with water-based Permatex. Kratex. That sound in the background is a display that I was going to show you falling off the wall. Tape's not sticking well. Anyway, I didn't like these paints because the pigments weren't as good as see Kratex, not Permatex. Permatex is what I used to use. So I've gone over to one-shot lettering enamels. These expensive things are boogers. These boogers are expensive. So that's the paint that I'm using now. Problem that you run into though with that is, I don't know if you can see this here, when you mask something off and then you clear coat it, in this case with white, if you touch it up with a one-shot, the white's not white. My friend Rob says black's not black. Same type of thing. All pigments aren't exactly the same. So I had to color that back over with some of the water-based Kratex, and then when I clear coat that with the urethane, that'll look better. This area here has been shot over with one-shot lettering enamel, and I get a good coat on that, and it does real well with the one-shot as far as covering up the lettering and all that, because net I'm going to silkscreen back on the lettering. Here in this red area, this red, you can't see it, and that's the way that it should be, but it didn't turn out as perfect as I'd like it to because of the amount of thinner that I used in it, just a tad bit too much. But net, this is going to turn out real well when it's all cleared over. These lines do real well. I'm using a sorry, like I said, not feeling quite as well as I'd like to right now, but this is the paintbrush that I've been using. This one works out really well. It's actually a fairly inexpensive one. I had been trying to use my double-aught sword striper. This is what you would use to pinstripe a car, but it's too hard to keep the line where I want it. This thing loads up too much paint, and you got to mess with it with your fingers quite a bit. You like stroke it out. You end up doing the same thing with this paintbrush. But so what I'll end up doing here is I've got a CD-ROM, good use for my old CD-ROMs, and I'll take this paintbrush and just lightly dip it in, put about 4 paintbrush loads full on here, and then I literally take this eyedropper, and in my thinner I'll just soak up a little bit of that and then put it into one of these jars, and then use that and dip that paintbrush in, and then stroke out some paint just so that it's the right consistency, and start doing lines on here. Still getting back into the feel of this paint on this specific material, where you'll get an electrostatic charge that builds up on here, and you can kind of see that right here, where you'll be striping along just fine, and then all of a sudden your brush wants to pull one way or another. And part of the challenge with that is these zones, even though this paint lays really flat, you'll get just a light buildup on there. You know, real thin buildup of variance on the edge, and that'll pull on your brush, but you also get some electrostatic buildup. And you know, you can go back in with a rag, and I'll take a rag at the end of this brush like this. Let's say I take this rag here, and I literally will take that rag, run it over, pull it nice and taut, and then dip that in some thinner, and then just kind of brush that edge away again. And you can do that until you're insane. So sometimes you're better off. You got to be really in a good mood. You know, I got to wait until after my morning coffee has cleared my system so that I don't have the handshakes or whatever, and then go back in and brush that stuff. So I've got you know, these teal zones hand striped back on. These are just a little bit thicker than I wanted, so I'm going to go back in with a little bit of one-shot yellow and fix those lines up. I'm real happy with the way these lines have come out. going in and hand filling this bonus area. I was going to screen that back on, but man, for the complexity of doing that multi-layer screening where I've got to do the white, screen that on one screen, so I'd have to burn a screen, then do the black over top of that. It's just too much. I was going to try and silk screen all of these lines, but man, you know, trying to do all these lines in Corel Draw and then burning one full-size screen, and I'll show you what I've done. So you can see how far I've gone on this thing. I've got a DesignJet 750C Plus plotter at this point. I went out and got me a LaserJet printer. Here's my drafting board, all my templates. I got my airbrush stuff out here. Here's all my paints, you know, my lights. I got to work on my light station. That light right there, I got to move over. Here's all my silk screening stuff. This screen here, the black one, I thought I was going to be able to use, but they screwed up and they didn't get me the right size screen. I was, you know, wanting a full size screen that would fit this whole thing, and now that one's just kind of sitting there. I'll use that for something else. This was going to be my silk screen stretching slash pinball playfield transportation box. You see the handles in there. I made that up. I might still use that one for transporting boxes around. There's my color markers. Here we have a full-size plot of the playfield, and I was all happy because I did this full-color scan in Photoshop and merged these scan plates together using my flatbed scanner, but they were all off, and then I was driving myself bonkers trying to make sure that you know, when you lay this over top of things, these circles, everything has to be perfectly registered. So my friend Rob and I were talking, and he said, why don't you just go back to the 8.5 by 11 films, and you can kind of see one of those films here. This is actually a transparency. I put it on this white to where I can show you what that looks like. And then after you plot that out, I ended up actually going over into AutoCAD. And so I've taken these films now, and I've got these circles perfectly registered. Okay, and when you first do your plot, you can probably see here maybe I didn't lay that on there perfectly, and that shows you a good example. But you lay that on there, and then I literally, and I like to work in millimeters, I would take my micrometers and I would measure the distance that I need to nudge that, and I'd have to take a little marker and write right on here, okay, I got to go X this way, Y that way, you know, either negative, positive in either X or Y, and then nudge those around and then reprint it and lay that on there. And once that was perfect, then I just taped this one on. Then I would take the next registration film, and I would I'm laying that over top of this one. And again, since it's 8.5 by 11, I got to turn this one portrait, this one's landscape. You know, you have to have something to line up. So these two circles are on this 8.5 by 11 sheet, and you have to carry the lines all the way through. So this one here, if you notice, look at the that sweep, that radius of circles. That lays on here, and these two circles, you probably can't see that. Anyway, I think you get the point. You have to keep everything perfectly aligned, both X and Y in its movement, and also from a rotational angle, so that that stuff lines up perfectly. And then once I get everything all the way across the board, so what I'm going to be screening on are these circles, because trying to hand paint these circles so that they're absolutely perfect with a striping brush would drive you bonkers. So I want those circles perfect, and then there's a series of dots that go on that PlayStation field. So see these dots here, and then all of these numbers. So I've done all of this in Corel Draw. Again, I'm not going to do these lines around here. I'm going to hand stripe those lines. The zones are all painted. That special thing, I'm going to end up hand painting that, I'm thinking, but I'm probably going to screen the black outline of that word special and then just hand fill it with a fine paintbrush. And in order to do that, I've got this magnifying light, and again, when my hand's feeling perfect and I'm not having any shakes, then I will go in there and work under a big magnifying glass and fill that in with white.